Hello, everyone. I'm Father Alexander Har.
And I'm Father David Marshall.
I, I thought you were the Reverend David Marshall.
I thought you were the Reverend Alex. Wait,
What?
what?
Synonymous?
I'm. I mean, I'm. What?
Are
Did I?
these
Did I? Okay.
these?
So, folks, we go by many titles,
Hmm.
and I often refer to myself as the Reverend because it's an official title, but
Yeah.
everybody calls me Father. So, but I don't know. It's this is a weird week.
Yes, it is. So, no matter what you call yourself, it's okay.
Yeah,
Somebody asked me yesterday if they should call me Father or Reverend I said, just don't call me late for dinner. Call me whatever you like because I don't stand on
perfect.
ceremony.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. Yeah. I
And
didn't. Yes.
this is a bridge between.
This is a bridge between where we are bridging our knowledge of the gospel and our friendship and our physical distance away from each other, but our very closeness as being friends and fellow pastors in the presbyterate. How would you want to? What other titles do you want to throw in there?
Hmm. I don't want to go down that road. There's going to be a lot of titles that we can throw around.
No, that's true.
Um,
Right. Right.
yeah.
I
Uh,
guess I almost said I'm the mostly Reverend David, and I decided not to because that
no,
seems heretical.
that's no, that you shouldn't do
Right.
that. You
Right.
shouldn't
Because
do that.
there's the very and there's the right and there's the most.
The most, and there's one
So,
guy who's that.
okay. Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
But we are bridging
Should,
ourselves to the weekend.
should we start over?
No,
No, we're in this far.
we're in
We're
this
gonna keep
far.
rolling.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Now this week, as we come to the end of this week and get ready for the next one, we're dealing with
Uh-huh.
Labor Day. So
Uh-huh.
that's why we're recording a little early and getting ourselves some much needed rest on that Monday and giving ourselves some time to actually reflect a little bit a week ahead of time on the readings.
Yeah. So for those that are wondering what life is like on a barrier island, oh wait, nobody ever asks that. Labor Day is always one of those weird days because for 85% of my congregation, every Monday is Labor Day. So so it's not that much different for them. But then people show up at the island, family members fly in to see them.
Yeah.
So, we could have like a whole bunch of people, or we could have like 25. So, who knows? It's always exciting. What about? Wait, this is your first Labor Day weekend at your new church.
We don't have, since we
Yeah.
don't have a lot of students, we're not waiting for families to come back. Also,
Right.
we start school a lot earlier than we
True.
used to from back when I was younger,
Oh, that
when I was a
reminds me.
kid.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to have a huge drop off in terms of attendance, but there should be some people who decide that they're going away for the weekend.
Yeah, and some of those people come to an island, and they should show up at All Angels for those that are heading to the beach. That
Exactly.
would be great to have you stop by. I have one point that I wanted to raise, and I have nobody else I can talk to about this except for you, Alex. So, you ready?
Hmm.
So, I born and raised Washington State. We would always start school the Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember which, after Labor Day. That's just because
Hmm.
August in Washington State is the best month,
Yeah.
and it almost makes up for the really bad, 9-month long winter. So that almost makes up for that. Um, so then I was watching the news that in Philadelphia and other places that they are having to postpone or shorten schedules because it's too hot.
Hmm.
And I leaned back and yelled at the TV, "Then don't start until September." Anyway, that's what I had said, right? But the TV didn't respond. Like, it's too hot to start in August. Gee, if only there was a way we could start later.
If only there was a way. Well, I think we'll save the discussion on what schools are going to be doing for another episode.
Yeah. So where did this creep come from? Why did this start? I mean, when do we start going back to school in July? Right? I mean, what? I
Like I
don't.
said, that's a much longer discussion that has a lot more to do in Florida with test scores and the desire to extend learning and hurricane days. So
I thought it had something to do with football, frankly, but
I wish,
that was my
but
guess. But yeah.
but but good segue here, if I can try to make that
There's
segue.
give it a shot.
Exactly. Is that as we bridge, we're trying to today bridge the gap between faith and works.
Hmm. So when you talk about works, what do you mean?
Well, let's be clear. We're talking about that in the James's letter that we're going to be continuing to read over the next several weeks, he has this very important line that says, "Faith without works is dead."
It's a
You know,
great line.
if you, which is a
Mhm.
great line. I mean, if you, what good is it to have faith if you see somebody who is lying in the street or in need and you don't do anything about it?
Yes.
And I think when he's talking about works, I think he's talking about the acts of charity specifically. Now, I think that has over the centuries morphed into something a little bit different,
I think so.
you
Yeah.
know, and so as a result, that I think that part has been corrupted. I
Hmm.
have always taken it to mean that when we have faith, if that faith is alive, that's what he means by faith is dead versus alive, that if our faith is truly alive, it's living, breathing, active. It is external. We are demonstrating it to the world through what we do. Is that how I think some people interpret it? Not
Oh,
always.
whoa, no, right.
Not always.
Yeah. Well, can we first start with who James is? So, oh, and I have some exciting news. We have, besides your mom and my mom, we have another listener.
Mm.
So his name is John, and he likes church history because he's still learning about how all this works. And so, do you want to do a brief? So, do you want to say who you think James is, and I'll say who James is, and then we'll see if we
I
have
always get
matches.
it confused.
Okay.
Is it James the brother of Jesus or is it James the brother of John?
Um, you ask a very good question. I'm going to give you an opinion. I don't know if it's the real one. I
All
mean,
right.
it's my real opinion. I don't know if it's the real
If it's the
answer.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, so we believe it's James who was the first overseer or first bishop, first episcopate of Jerusalem, and
Hmm.
that's a really important place to be. It's also a very difficult place to be a bishop, um, and still is. So I believe that this James is the was born of Mary and as Joseph, so he is related to Jesus.
Hmm.
This is the James that Paul referred to, that he met with Peter, he met with a few others, he met with
Hmm.
James, and then that's this James, and that the history that we believe, that I believe, that
Hmm.
I've read, that I agree with, is that when Jesus, prior to the resurrection, James was not a believer that Jesus was the Messiah, and
Right.
that with that conversation that Jesus had with James, it converted his heart, and now he believes. James and Paul did not get along, which is also interesting to me. And so, if you hear a Jamesonian argument about faith and works and grace, and you hear a Pauline argument about it, what I love about this is that the church isn't showing a strong, unified side by sequestering other voices that may appear on the surface to disagree. We are just highlighting what we have as far as letters go. So James wrote this open letter, we believe, to the church in Jerusalem, which then was extended beyond that. Anything else you think about James that, or do you disagree with my
No,
summary?
actually, I agree with your assessment because that has always been kind of the tradition that I have followed.
Right.
There's a couple different Jameses that we associate with, just like there's a couple different Johns and such.
Hmm.
What's important for me is when we talk about that, even when we have differing voices, I think it's still pointing to the same God. It's still pointing theologically very close to one another. So, for example, when I think of the word faith, I think of trust. I think of putting our trust in Christ, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
but the act of putting our faith in Christ also manifests itself in how we treat others. I think where people may get hung up is the idea of, between Paul and James, is the idea of what is it that saves you,
Right.
you
Exactly.
know, and
Yes.
and I think what we're talking about is if you were to take a word and look at a homonym, like two words that sound the same,
Hmm.
right, but they're different, it's like they're taking the same word and they're just looking at it from two different angles, and it's the same thing. Faith is what saves you. You can't save yourself. Faith is what saves you. There's nothing we can do to save ourselves. But a faith that is not alive is worthless.
Right. And I would go uh, further back a little bit and say that faith is what saves,
Hmm.
um, and and saves you. Um, I think personally, what saves me or you, one, is faith with a relationship with God. Um, but the overarching thing is that faith is what saves. You cannot comprehend and know everything, and nor do you have to have comprehension in all the things that you believe in. You can still, in other words, you can believe in something that you don't have full comprehension of.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And that's what faith is. There's no way we're going to comprehend God. We're not going to understand Jesus's gift of grace. We're not going to understand fully or totality the whole enchilada of this. There's no way to grasp all of it, but we put our faith into God's grace and trust and love.
Yeah. And so what I wanted to get into was we talked about kind of two different perspectives. Growing up in the Roman tradition for a long time, there came to be a sense that I encountered with some and that I encountered in the teaching of some clergy is that faith and works together are what save. Now, if this is a misrepresentation, if our Roman Catholic colleague wants to come on, please, come on and
Yes.
correct me. Uh,
Yes.
but but the point I want to make is that there was this idea of the kinds of works that we do
Hmm.
matter. And so this is where you would get things like how many rosaries you say, or how often you go to confession, or making a pilgrimage, or doing certain things, certain prayers that would kind of like extend grace or give more grace in that aspect, which ended up feeling more like works to me.
Yeah.
And so when I became an Episcopalian and really embraced the Protestant side, it
Hmm.
took a while for me to return to some of those things that I do in prayer, like rosaries and things like that, because I said, well, that doesn't; those things don't really matter. I thought at the time when I first became more Protestant,
Wow.
I said,
Okay.
well, let
Okay.
me kind of step away from those things because it's faith that matters. Then, of course,
Right.
a balance is struck as you grow spiritually.
Yes. Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I was about to jump into defending the rosary. That's
Well,
amazing.
you don't need to defend it from me, but I'm just
No,
saying.
right. But to say, no, it does matter. It matters what you pray. It matters to have that repetition, to have the practice. And it doesn't work for everybody, but for those for whom it does, then keep doing it. But
Well,
oh, that's interesting. I never thought I feel that passionate about
well,
about a tradition that wasn't given to me.
but the thing I want to point out though is that the way it's presented sometimes is that if
Mhm.
you do this number or do this amount, that this is where you will accrue, so to speak.
Right.
And
Right.
and
Right.
and that to me was what I needed to step back from and really pray a good deal about what these aspects of prayer or aspects of piety
Mhm.
were really doing.
Yes. And so, for being Americans, we like to have the model of economy of
Hmm.
we need to work for something, and
Yep.
that something is so important as salvation that we should work for it, and that the more
Hmm.
you work for it, the better your experience in heaven. And there are passages, especially the one where Jesus said, "Store up for yourselves not treasures on earth, store up for yourself riches in heaven." That we work toward, like we think that we need to be working towards this, and for our own the way that we're raised, the way that we teach, and all that, it feels very comfortable to us. And so you add that for you
Hmm.
yourself, and then you add in your Roman tradition to that, and it feels pretty comfortable to say I'm working for my own salvation.
Right. And let me tell you what transformed my understanding of that permanently. I
Mm.
asked a question, and I felt it really came from God when I asked this question is, what if I'm incapable of doing the work?
Ooh, okay,
You
that's a
know,
good question.
so for
Right.
example, if you think to people who will say, well, if you take such and such pilgrimage, or you pray this many times daily, or you give this amount of money, depending on there's a religious tradition that may promote that.
Yeah.
What if I can't? Does
Right.
that mean that I'm not fit for salvation?
Right.
This
Right.
is where that sola fide, faith alone, seems very very pertinent.
Hmm.
But So I began to think about that, and I also began to think about people who didn't know, who had never learned about any of these traditions. What was the disposition of their soul if they couldn't do these things?
I
Um,
completely agree. Yep.
there are people I met who fell into that place and actually became very spiritually sad because they're like,
Yeah,
I don't feel like I'm close to God because I can't do X, Y, and Z.
exactly. Yep. Like you, I have said goodbye to some parishioners who I love who had Parkinson's, and I
Mm.
have a
Hmm.
new one who was recently diagnosed, and it's breaking my heart. But along those lines, this particular parishioner won't be able to do the physical works that she used to as
Hmm.
time goes on. And so,
Hmm.
if on an economical model we are trying to build our storage in heaven,
Hmm.
because of this particular disease and this degenerative sense, she won't be able to work as hard. And so, therefore, she won't be in the same place in heaven. Well, that's not a God I believe in.
Right.
Um,
And
right?
here's the other part, which I'm glad that you brought that up, is something in the Western church, because of our sense of independence, because
Yeah.
of our sense of, pull up yourself by your own bootstraps.
Right.
We also find that we maybe inadvertently or subconsciously give greater value to the people who show up more all the time, to the people who give more of the resources. This is what James is talking about as well.
I
Is
think that's yes,
you
that's
know,
absolutely down the line of what he's talking about.
and
Um,
I encountered um, an extreme version of this when I was helping a congregation do some discernment around a particular service for a particular language. And they were like, well, what kind of resources do these individuals have to give to the church in order to make this a sustainable ministry?
right.
And that's not a bad question. But I challenged them and said, did you ask the same question to the children for their ministry? Going so
Did
much
they?
as,
Did
going
they?
some, no,
They look at the 5-year-old and say, "What are you gonna do to be able to?" Yeah. Hmm.
going so much as to ask, did you shake the little kids' piggy banks to make sure they're giving up to the enough to the church?
Right. Right. Uh, okay. So you were raised in the Roman tradition, and you identify in a particular order,
What do you mean
right?
identify?
Um,
Well, I'm a member of a religious order, if that's what
yeah,
you're
that's what I
asking.
meant.
Yes, I'm a
Right.
Franciscan friar, yes.
Thank you. Good.
Okay.
And following Saint Francis,
Hmm.
right? So my undergraduate work was done at a Benedictine university, so following the tradition of Saint Benedict,
Oh, yeah.
and of whom I'm a huge fan. I mean, obviously you can tell I am because I went to school there. Benedict was famous for creating a system that said, "You will pray hard, you will work hard." So
Hmm.
hard labor is hard prayer is labor. You know that they those things go hand in hand. And
Yep.
the monastery at my university had well, it still does, but it's not as big as it used to be. They have had a really large commercial garden, and that they would go out and produce their own food, and that the monks, the brothers who were out there with the shovels and the hose in the field, that they felt that Benedict had taught that hard labor is the same as prayer, and that when they pray, and that there are other monks, other brothers who couldn't go out and toil that hard, so they would be in the chapel in prayer
Hmm.
while the others are out working, and that Benedict held both of those two things and saying that they are both equal or both important in the kingdom of God. And so, obviously, this Benedictine run school has a great emphasis on the work that one does to build God's kingdom. And that influences, it changes all the way that we study mathematics, the way we do engineering, and the way I was in political science. Is that it's everything is wrapped around this rule of life, of that you toil hard, you pray hard, you build the kingdom together. And I wonder again, as I read through this letter of James about faith, and can faith save you? I wonder what Benedict or Francis would have said about that.
Well, I mean, from the Franciscan standpoint, I think there was a deep commitment he had to the preaching of the gospel. That
Yeah.
was primary.
Yep.
Um, but there was also a commitment to removing barriers within your life that
Uh,
were preventing you from having that relationship with God. So I think that in his mind, and I'm not here to speak for Francis, but I think in his mind, the he would probably be really close to James in
right,
saying, if your faith is dead, if you're
right.
not caring for others, in his case, not caring for the lepers and the poor, then can you really call it faith? But once again, I come back to this word that we're using in two different ways.
Okay.
We're using faith as something, right? A thing that
Hmm.
saves. And
Right.
faith is also something that is alive, right? So,
Or can die.
or can die, and so I think, like I said, that's where I get the both and situation from, with Paul and James. But, at the parish level, if we're talking about speaking to our congregations, I think it's very important, number one, that we assure people there is nothing you can do to earn your salvation. Just
Wait, what? You can't earn it?
nope, can't earn it, which
Why
means
not?
it's so expensive, it's already been paid for. Um,
It's
you
so
know,
expensive. There's no way.
but
Yes.
now that doesn't mean it was cheap.
Oh no. Oh
That
no.
doesn't mean it was cheap. There
Hmm.
was a godly price paid.
Hmm.
And so there's nothing we can do to earn it, which means because God loves us, there's nothing we can do to lose it. We can walk away from it.
Yeah.
We can discard it like trash,
We can
but we
ignore it.
can't but we can't lose it, right?
Hmm.
And so once you've kind of gotten that gem together for your
Hmm.
congregation, the other part of it is, how is your faith alive? What are signs of life in your spiritual life that demonstrate to God and to your neighbor that you are a person of faith?
Are you going to answer that question, or are you going to let it hang out there?
I was going to let you just jump in.
Oh, nice. Thanks. So at the I just looked at the clock and realized I was going to go a whole different direction, and maybe I shouldn't do that. You've heard of the social gospel,
Hmm.
and the sense that there was a movement that started when you and I mean, I'm older than you, but around the time that we were born,
Yeah.
that if you really believe in Jesus, you're going to spend all your time feeding the poor. You're going to go
Hmm.
out and advocate and do those type of things, and that when you do that, you find Jesus. For as much as I would agree with that, at the same time, there's more to our faith life than simply or only
Hmm.
doing that type of work or that type of activity. So
Yeah, I
the
agree.
the congregation that I currently serve has does not have the physical stature or
Hmm.
ability to go out and do a lot of that heavy lifting or that hard labor. But they still have faith, and it is very active in what they can do. And so what we do here is not as bright and as visible as people within the social justice gospel area. Um, it doesn't look like that. It looks something different, but it is still
Yeah.
of high value, and it shows that their faith is alive.
So I would take two things from that. With the social gospel, this has been my critique of some in the church who focus a great deal on the social gospel and social justice, which should be an important focus of the
Mhm.
church. I'm not saying to discard it,
Absolutely.
but to have faith and to nurture faith requires that we never forget that our primary function as Christians is worship.
Hmm.
It is worshiping God. Now, there's many ways to worship God. I'm not saying it has to be a certain way, but worshiping God, building that relationship of faith with Christ is paramount. Then going out, because there are people who I've seen this phenomenon in some parishes where great outreach, all these wonderful things, but the worship has suffered because the energy
Yes.
has not been placed there.
Yes.
To follow along with what you did, as kind of we get to the last part of our section here, is I recognize that I'm in a retirement community as well.
Hmm.
And so I see a lot of people who are either unable to attend church or unable to get around, unable to lift the boxes and do all those things. So I actually encouraged them, and we put in part of our weekly announcements the prayer list. And I
Mhm.
created a small home liturgy for you to pray through the prayer list by yourself,
Mhm.
right? Or with another person. And I said, if you did this every day, and we know that prayer transforms, if you did this every day, what would the church be like? How would it affect the people you're praying for? And then the other part is, and if you know that those people are not well, do you reach out and call them? That's the outer part, right? And I've got a lot of good feedback about that from people who say, I can't attend this meeting, I don't drive anymore. I said, but I can pray.
You can,
And
and you
that to
should.
me, is the most important lesson I think we should be communicating to our congregation.
Yes, because everybody has different gifts. Everybody has different works in this
Hmm.
sense, but it is one faith, and so we need everybody pulling and doing what they can. And some can do a lot more when they were younger and can't do as much.
Right.
I have the exact opposite too, where people did nothing when they were younger, and now are in a position where they do have the time and the means to be able to help others in a very significant way.
Yeah.
And I think God understands all of that.
Absolutely. And so I think it's just, once again, it's always meeting people where they are. But I think
Mhm.
if you're looking at this text this week, it's making sure you use some good definitions of faith and works and what James is trying to get at. And always encouragement,
Mhm.
giving your congregation encouragement about what they can do
Mhm.
instead of what they think they need to do.
Yes. All right. I'm going to use one more Benedictine piece, and this will
Hmm.
only take 45 seconds. But part of works is ethics and
Hmm.
living an ethical, Christ centered life.
Hmm.
So if you can't pray as much as a monk, if you can't work in the field as a farmer, you still have your daily promise and exercise of living into forgiving as we're forgiven and to give as we have been, to live into all of those ethics. And
Absolutely.
that for some people's faith, it is simply being an ethical life now, and not the life maybe they led before, but the life that they are now currently leading. And so faith without ethics is also dead.
I like that. So yeah, um, I think this is going to be very good. It's going to be very good.
I
So
think it's great.
to everyone who's going to be enjoying their Labor Day weekend, we congratulate you and ask that you remember those who labor and that you labor as well, if you do, to give thanks and to give thanks to God that we may labor in His
Yeah.
vineyard.
And I also believe this episode's coming out on the Wednesday after Labor Day.
Hmm.
So
So,
for those that
so for those so for those of you who enjoyed it, great. For those of you who didn't get a chance to, maybe take the next weekend. I don't know.
I don't know. But labor itself, both Francis and by what you say, and Benedict by what you do,
Mhm.
all of them lead to the faith that is visible and faith that this world so desperately needs to see.
All right. Well, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you in the next one.
God bless.